One. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Spinner Act. It's me, your host, Calvin Ellis, ready to rock. And we got a special guest today. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, hey y'all. What's up? It's Professor CA back in the building.
You are Professor CA. Hello?
Yeah, I didn't hear you at all. You were blank.
Oh, no, I'm saying, how's everything out where you are, Professor CA?
Well, it's cool, man. Weather's always nice out here. Right now the air quality is dope. Hopefully, knock on wood, that will continue.
All right. Well, it's wet over here. It's fire over there. It's the end of the world. So before that, we're gonna get together over here so we can have a look at the film, The Green Knight. Now, I myself, the resident Arthurian literature expert, was really interested in this film, and both Mario and PD said we want nothing to do with this. So I was able to cajole Professor CA to come in from the West Coast and do this particular show. Okay, so let's get right into it. As you're the guest, Professor CA, why don't you give us a little overview on the film, okay, and then we can get into it.
All right, so here's the overview. Again, this is a chivalric romance tale, in the true sense of the word romance, not a love story, but just in terms of a type of film. So yeah, it's set in the days of Arthur, even though it's kind of really downplayed. And basically what happens is it's Christmas, they're about to celebrate, and around the round table, and then in walks in a knight made of green, green meaning nature, and he comes in and he's like, hey, let's play a game. Who want to step to me right now? I will let you strike a blow to me with no resistance, and then we'll see what it is. And if you strike me down, then you know what? All I ask is that you let me do to you what was done to me a year from now. So Arthur's like, yo, I would love that smoke, but I am getting up in age, so I can't take that. Surely one amongst my people will do it. A little bit of an awkward pause, but his nephew, Sir Gawain, says, you know what? I'm ready to jump into this and take this challenge, especially since just a few minutes ago, I was having a problem kind of figuring out, why do I belong here when I'm not a knight? And I don't have any great tales of my adventures to tell. So this is my opportunity for that adventure.
Foreshadowing.
He strikes he strikes the knight, cuts off his head. Arthur kind of gives this look like, damn, bro, that was extra. Then everybody claps. The knight picks up his head, bounces, says, see you in a year. And that's where we start this movie.
Well, I'll get right into it. I didn't enjoy the film at all because it came from a place of modernity without any regard for the original tale. Okay. I think I looked at a lot of the reviews, and the reviews tended to be very favorable, but I also have an understanding of critics when they go into films, and a lot of times these guys are so surfeited when it comes to films. They've seen almost all of the techniques and so on and so forth. So if something's different, they tend to be a lot more favorable, or if the acting is above par, they'll tend to be a bit more favorable. And story seems to be something that comes way out of it seems to be way out there for them at the end of the day. So if we're suitably entertained within the morass of films that they have to watch, and I understand they watch a lot of films, if not every film that gets released over the course of the year, plus a whole bunch of other stuff, then the reviews can be a bit more favorable. However, I don't believe the majority of the people who reviewed this film have any real idea about Sir Gawain in The Green Knight, the poem that the story is, it's loosely based on at the end of the day, or any of the tropes, motifs, symbolism that was actually in that particular story. This was just this was a vehicle that somebody decided to option, and there's a lot of name recognition. And again, there's name recognition as opposed to just going in with something else. I can sell this to a studio like, hey, if I did a modern take of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight and so on and so forth, you think we can get this done? And particular actor so I can get this off. But the poem itself, for instance, when the Green Knight comes in and he's dressed in green, yeah, that is symbolic of nature. But part of, and this is one of the sub themes of the film, is the struggle of man against nature, what that particular conflict.
Yeah.
And is it possible for a man to surmount nature, to surmount his own nature? And we find that over the course of the story. So those things that I'm like, okay, if you come in this, and I still get to see some of those things, okay, I might be able to go a little bit further with the modern takes. But unfortunately, I'm coming in here, and this is everything. It's the modern stance, not only on it's a modern view of what they believe chivalry actually was, number one, but also a modern view on humanity. That pretty much we're just flawed, effed up creatures at the end of the day. Maybe, just maybe, we'll get something right at the very end, if we're lucky. Okay, if Gawain is the person that we have to literally depend on as an example of modern day humanity, we're screwed. Okay, and you get that from in the very last scene of the film as well.
Wow. Tough take. I kind of, it's like I disagree and I agree with your take. It's definitely a looser translation of the original source material. I do believe the director was a fan of that material, and I think that the film doesn't quite, and I think the director is aware of this, the film on its own merits only hints at the depth of theme in the poem. And I think the movie begs you to find and learn more about the original source material to get the full kind of feel, to kind of get the full effect of the movie. You kind of have to at least be aware of the original source material and the themes within. And in a lot of ways, I felt like, but also as a director, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt to kind of look at the things that he changed were basically just a way to kind of like, okay, how to deal with this for the people. I think he was going for two audiences: people who are familiar or would find out about the source material, and people who were taking it at face value.
Really? You think so?
Yeah, I honestly think so. Because the thing is, he departed from the text in several places, especially where he kind of reversed things, where I believe in the original poem, Sir Gawain kind of like passed all the tests except for the last one. And then in this one, he fails all of the tests except for the last one. And I thought that I'm not sure why he made that decision, but it was interesting. And I don't know, I feel like if you're familiar with at least the symbolism of at least the pentangle and what that is representative of, then you can kind of look at him like, okay, you could kind of rock out, because he in this quest, every one of those chivalric virtues were tested. And I appreciated that. So from that regard, I thought it was kind of like at least adhering to give an offering of a movie from the 80s, of those sci-fi films. Whereas like the last good one I have to kind of like lean on is Excalibur. I have not necessarily say that this is a modern version of Excalibur in terms of quality, thematically, but it is the closest thing from my view that I can see that's available for youth today. So I think like,
God, that's awful.
Yeah. I know you probably think that, but the thing is like, yeah, but like this is, I feel like if this movie causes you to read the original source material and then you sit with the movie through that lens, I don't know, not that bad a movie.
No, I feel the director was like, look, nobody's ever going to go back and read the source material, so I can do whatever the hell I want.
Wow.
Most of the people will watch this and say, oh wow, that's pretty good. If they vibe with it, they're like, yeah, this is good. This is really what. And he's pretty much counting on the fact that these people are never going to go back and look to read a poem that was written, 600-700 years ago, probably in English that they don't readily understand. Okay, so they can get a deeper meaning of this, and then I can just go over here and rip roar. I can just rip roar and panic at this at the end of the day. Even the opening where it's set at Christmas time. So And that's something else that was totally, I mean, absent from the film. This is a story that's dealing with there are several Christian themes, or at least sub themes, if you will, throughout this. They're all absent from this one. And then, if you want to do most people are familiar with Christianity in terms of a Hollywood approach at the end of the day, and that's the furthest thing from what the actual source material is, especially in Christianity overall, as well. But you come in and it's set during Christmas time, so you have all those themes that go along with Christmas. That whole Yuletide thing that's going on. But put that to the side. One of the first things is that Arthur's like, well, I'm getting old, so I can't do. No, in the original thing, Arthur's not old. Okay, Arthur's the king, and it would be beneath the king to have to do this himself when he has all of these knights who should be. These are knights of the Round Table. Okay, this is Arthur's Knights of the Round Table. These are fabled and famous knights in this particular story. This is like a new thing that has happened. In the story, Gawain, in the original poem, Gawain is the one of the youngest, if not the youngest knight at that time. And the fact that this guy comes in and frees it, all of these knights of renown, and all of the other knights would have been there. All those legendary knights would have been there. After having to come up himself and do it, that would have been the ultimate humility as a king for him to have to do this. So it wasn't an age thing, but that's something that if you are not getting from the original, it just gets lost, and it portrays Arthur terribly. Well, I'm just an old guy, I can't do this. No, that's not the case at all. But again, those are, that's from the material. And again, I don't think the average person cares. Oh yeah, Arthur was probably old at the time. No, he wasn't. But why should that matter? You're not going to go read this at the end of the day. The 5 points of chivalry, where again, because I'm looking at Gawain's portrayal in the film as opposed to the poem. In the poem, he fails at he passes every test with the exception of the last, and that's the most important test. Mm-hmm. Now, I understand you're saying that he fails at all the tests with the exception of the last one, but I'm going through the film. He fails at that one too, because we're not giving anything definitive that says he passes it. Because they want to end the film ambiguously, especially with this whole dream sequence as, well, this is a possibility. We're never given anything definitive as to, well, does he actually sit for this? Is this still part of his dream? What happens afterwards? Because they want to do the modern take. And the modern take is not to end a story, but it's to leave it on an ambiguous nature, like Fatal Attraction or something, and the audience can wonder as to what is supposed to happen. Whereas the poem is like, no, this is definitive because there are certain virtues, there's a moral that they want you to extract from this particular story about humanity, even for a knight, and these who are supposed to be the pinnacles of humanity at the end of the day. Because at first blush, I looked at it and I was like, yeah, he fails at everything except for the last one. I was like, wait a minute, you kick yourself in your own ass because you decided to end this ambiguously. We have no idea if he even passed the last
one. Well, how do you define passing? Because, like, for me, passing means that he accepted nature, that he accepted fate, God's will, whichever of those you want to rock with, but he accepted it. And that was shown by the fact that he was like, oh, wait, hold up, takes off the girdle, mm-hmm. Or in this case, the scarf, and sets it aside, meaning he knows he has no protection. He is at the whim of what his knight's going to do. He's not flinching anymore. He has accepted his fate.
How do you know that's what he did?
Huh?
How do you know that's what he did?
Because he took off the girdle.
No, we know that he leaves, and then he has this reverie, if you will, of what the future may hold for him. We don't know if that reverie ever stopped. We don't even know if that reverie isn't exactly what happened. And then while he's on the throne, he's thinking back to the day with the Green Knight and thinking,
damn,
this may have been what have happened if I had taken it off, because it's not definitive.
Well, see, so you just added a wrinkle in there. I took it like he went there, was all like, I don't know, this is hard. And then had the vision, then flashed back to just being there, and it's like, okay, and then changed as a result of being shown this vision of what his life would be as a mortal man, similar to like what he did in The Last Temptation of Christ, where like he's given this vision of like, what would it rock out to be if I was to be a normal dude? And his vision is like, what would it be if I kind of continued down this path of leaning toward my worst side of my worst choices that I can make.
You are doing the work that the writer is supposed to do. You're giving, okay, you're filling in those synapses that aren't connected. But you wanted they wanted to be cute, and they wanted to end this ambiguously. So the moment that he walks out and he decides he goes into that vision reverie state, we don't know when it ends.
I hear you. No, I'm not. Again, I mean, like, I am debating with you for the sake of shaking the truth out. But yeah, your point's taken. Like, you could look at it if you choose to. You could look at it like that. Like you said, I chose to look at it like, because for me, the only thing that was ambiguous was whether or not he lived or not like whether or not he cut his head off or not, but not whether or not he passed the test, given the way I interpreted the movie. Now, you could make a fair, if you want to go ahead and say that this is that this director is making criticism of the chivalric values, there's space for that, right? Because if you look at the scene where the scavenger or the beggar is kind of there, and he's like, not only does he kind of like give him like a nickel, where like you're like, dude, like Arthur freaking is his army that decimated his village and his people. So like I could see certain sections where he's kind of making commentary on that, or even when
that's not commentary. That's again, that's Hollywood morality. So this is where we're going to come over and we're going to create a scene. All we know, we see the end result, and then we see someone who is not a knight. Right. He's not a knight, without a doubt. He's not a knight. He has no experience with the chivalric code. And then we put that situation in there. And then, of course, what are we going to say other than this is horrible? We have no idea why the battle was fought.
Right.
Okay? We have no information other than the ending. We get to see the ending. We get to see the detritus. We get to see this guy acting horrible. That's not a commentary in the chivalric code because we don't get to see everything. And just leads me to believe this guy doesn't understand the chivalric code. But that's the modern perspective that all war is bad. Okay. The end result has to be this. The little guy is always going to suffer. And the people who fight the wars don't really care about these particular people. What's worse is that we're supposed to believe that someone like Gawain would actually gain in virtue and morality over the course of a year in these particular experiences when he doesn't have any to start. And this isn't his first year of life or second. He's been around virtuous, chivalric knights his entire life. And he has none of those values. But we're supposed to believe that somehow by the end of this, he gains all of this within this particular think of a vision, which again, more modern claptrap. We're going to get it right. We're going to get it right just at the very end before all hope is lost or something like, no, that doesn't usually happen.
And also he's going to get it right with a healthy dose of Deus Ex Machina.
Well, the great thing about the original is that it's definitive. So if you don't like it, that's fine. If you like it, you have particular things that you can definitely point to. If you don't like it, things you can particularly point to. But the fact that you can say, well, my take on this, we don't have a definitive ending. I could be just as right as you are. And that's horrible for a story like this that really is supposed to be about, plays on things of human nature and morality. Okay. What is it? Christian sensibilities at the end of the day, which are totally absent from it. The idea of the original is that Gawain is reminded that as much as he will strive, okay, to be this pinnacle of humanity, okay, to be this perfect knight, he's still human, all right? He's still human at the end of the day. And his shame is actually hidden from everyone else. It's the nick that he receives on the back of his neck from the Green Knight, who gives him the smallest of cuts, because that's how impure he was. It was such a small thing at the end of the day. And the guy tells him, he chides him saying, well, look, at the end of the day, nobody wants to die, So I can understand that you were noble and honorable in everything except this. And Gawain is harder on himself, wearing the green sash for the rest of his life to remind himself of this particular lesson that he learned. The readers also learn that particular lesson, that we're not going to look at these guys as more than human. They're just as human as everybody else. They're going to fall short of these particular things, regardless of everything else. And these are things that you can take away from it. I go to the film. What the hell am I supposed to take away from that?
That's a good point. Yeah, I don't really have a counter to that in terms of what you're supposed to take away from that. Yeah. Um, yeah, I don't know what the meta commentary that he was going for with that was. I do understand from a creative standpoint why he decided to kind of leave it ambiguous, at least in terms of whether or not he lives or dies. Because like, what do you, as a director, what are you left with? And I'm not, again, I'm not coming from it with the same admiration for the original source material. I don't have a lack of admiration for it. I'm just not as familiar with it as you are. So like, because all you got, because he's making this whole long trip, and at the end of the day, there's only two things you can do to kind of like give us something at the end, especially if you're not going to be rocking off a specific theme like the source material was clearly doing, which is one, give us him emotionally facing that the fact that he's going to die, which they did. I was like, okay, I think you better give us some gravy for all of this. Yeah, give us the gravy. This is the whole thing that the whole thing's been building upon, is that the tension that the whole town is feeling is that you're going to your death. And why was his girlfriend telling him, like, yo, why are you trying to do that? Better to be good than to be great. This is some bullshit. So I guess it is kind of like, in a way, if you want to have that take that it's like criticism against the chivalry codes. Yeah, and then he goes, and then the only thing after that you can do now is kind of like give us a sense of having him pass the test. Is the way is my interpretation. Having him pass the test, but still leaving it ambiguous as to whether or not that deters the Green Knight or nature from following his course.
Well, if you've passed the test, then the Green Knight is going to deter from that course. Otherwise, you did not pass the test.
Right. Well, yeah, I took it the way I took it that he's like alive. I took it that when he did that thing around his neck, that was the little nick. And he just says, off with your head, like that, like he did it. Like that was me offing your head and you're good.
Because we love ambiguity in the modern world, we don't know.
Yeah. I mean,
these guys skip off. They're like, okay, I did it, I left it ambiguous, and that'll leave two people to argue about it rather than say, hey, they didn't give us anything.
Yeah. So is it fair to say that one of your bigger criticisms with this piece is that it didn't have a take, or you're just left clueless as to what that take could be? Or is the take just to have this kind of modern look at chivalry and say it's bullshit? Well, excuse my language.
Well, it's pretty much not too far what I was going to say. It said it takes a classic work of literature and just throws cat at it. Like, you have a great story here, and the thing is, you could have done everything else they do. You have the technology where you could have put stuff in terms of science and the cinematography, and really trying to get that across. And instead, you want to make it a vehicle for your own devices, and your devices aren't very good. Your devices probably aren't going to be told 700 years from now, as like this. So I'm like, okay, what was the purpose in using this? This is a great story. It's without being didactic. It's instructional. Without being preachy, it's moral. Okay, without being overbearing, it's insightful. I'm looking at your film. What am I supposed to, again, this is what it's based on. This is what you decided to do. What am I supposed to take away from this other than human beings are terrible things? And that institutions will but again, that's the Hollywood premise, modern thing too. Institutions are all evil. They're just here to keep us down, and so on and so forth. And the best that we can help from human nature is to screw up until the very last moment. What else do I take away from this?
Is there a character who exemplifies that view? And would it be the lady of the house? Because the way that played out, it seemed as if she was looking to take him down the whole time. Like she's like, okay, oh, you a knight? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the only thing I'm left that could possibly be the case, given how she interacted with him.
When he meets the mistress of the guy who owns the house, and she propositions him, and he sleeps with her.
Yeah, well, he didn't sleep with her, but yeah.
She didn't have to work too hard, did she?
No, not at all. She did have to work a little bit because he was not going to. if it's a normal situation, he was going to be able to resist. Meaning, you're going to ask for some things, you're going to flirt a little bit, but I'm not breaking you off. Nope, I know that shit's not right. She tries to get him to follow her into her room, and he's like, not going to do it. And then she goes into his room because obviously, like, that's to love. Like, look, I'm going to have to go into his room. She goes into his room, and she's like, "Well, how come you didn't come follow me?" He's like, "Nah, but you still want it, right?" And then the scene that followed uh, was a scene, which was a hilarious scene, given as to like not like that they did. There was an interaction, but it wasn't like penetration. And so it basically looks like she just serviced him and then left him, then made fun of him and shamed him. Was just like, "Oh, you ain't no knight." But and then I was like, "Ooh, that was cold." And then there was a shot that I didn't know that I needed in the film. So do you think that it was her kind of
No, it's Gawain.
okay.
It's Gawain. Gawain, if you want to take Gawain, instead of him being an archetypal hero like he is in the story, here he's the everyman. He's not a knight, he's the everyman. And what happens? Everyman is where the knight is going to remain resilient in these things because of stronger, because of intestinal fortitude, more courage, more discipline, all of this stuff. The everyman, once, twice, oh well, I tried. I resisted as much as I could. That's pretty much the end of it. And that's pretty much going to be the end of it at the end of it. So, because in the original story, Gawain is propositioned of the house 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't proposition him outside. She comes to his bedroom each time. So it's just the two of them. It's secluded. She's there and she makes the first proposition, and Gawain is kind of like, but the more she makes the proposition, the stronger Gawain becomes. That's the difference. So by the second or third time when she comes over, he's like, no, I already passed this test. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to dishonor, the person who's giving me shelter by sleeping with her. That's just not going to happen. And that's but then when she offers him like, oh, well, this will save your life, that's different.
Right.
That's different at the end of the day. That's something he can definitely, well, wait a second here. I'm marching to my doom. Okay. And this can actually help me. Even if he was being pragmatic, sleeping with you is not going to help me. Okay. Right. I'm marching to my doom too. That could just, send him to hell for the adultery, but could actually help me at the end of the day. So yeah, I'm going to take that. But that's one of the larger themes of faith, and having faith that this path that you're on is the right path, is going to end well. And that's what he drops the ball with the whole thing. Now, again, if we're talking modern sensibilities, faith is not played up in these types of films. So that's another theme that's just totally lost. Whereas, you could have had a character in Gawain who says, look, when I stepped up to cut off this guy's head, I knew what I was getting into. And, as a knight, as somebody who was supposed to be a Christian as well, I'm going to submit to my faith and trust that all of these actions that I have done were for the right reason, that defending my king was for the right reason. And I'm not going to take the out there, well, I'm going to die, so I'm going to do all these nasty things and I'm going to go against my virtues. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to meet my fate with the dignity, okay, and the belief that I've done the right stuff. And he does that with the exception of one thing in the story. In the film, this doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. And then we get that, it's both horrible and great because we get to see, okay, this is what we get with someone who is so willing to latch onto their life. They're not willing to give it up. And this is what we see. This is the outcome we see at the end of the day. But you want to be ambiguous about it. So now I have no idea if this guy learned anything or if this is all just reverie in his mind. That's a great argument for college students if they're working on a paper. And I'm saying, well, look, give me your interpretation on the ending. I could definitely get a lot of mileage off of that. But as someone who's consuming film, someone who writes, I'm looking at this, I'm like, okay, what did you just present here? This is like, hey, what's for dinner? The secret sauce. Well, what's in the secret sauce? Nothing that I can tell you about. And I'm not giving you anything but the secret sauce. Enjoy.
Well, if it's that Szechuan sauce that got canceled, then, might be worth it. Now, well, I don't want you to waste this opportunity as the authorian expert of the spinner rack. Like, okay, so obviously you have really critical views of the movie, did not like it, but it kind of wasted the themes and the source material that inspired it, so to speak.
Yeah.
Um, so it would be great if you could kind of give us what we missed. Like what are we missing, and what could have been if it had went along the lines of the original material? What were the themes that were lost?
No, like, well,
What
some
were
of
the
the stuff I
opportunities that
touched
were
on
lost?
already, and adherence. Again, this is the overall theme. The overall theme is honor at the end of the day with the original story. Okay, of what that means, and what that means in terms of Gawain's travels into what he feels are going to be his last days. Okay, and the parts of the chivalry code, and also why it was important for them to have that particular code of chastity, of charity, of all those particular things. So all of that's thrown out. And understand, also an understanding of the competing forces of man's nature against nature overall, and then trying to not necessarily control it, but trying to bring the best attributes out of it through faith, through this adherence, to a Christian belief. Those are also things that you missed going out with this as well. And because he succumbs, okay, because he succumbs to the mistress, okay, because he succumbs to the mistress, we don't get to see, okay, what is the virtue of chastity at the end of the day. This is a guy right over here who shows, no, I'm not going to do this because this guy is providing me shelter in my last days. And
Mhm.
why that's a noble thing, and why that is a treasure thing at the end of the day. That even at one point it makes the wife look shameful at the end of the day. So there's a lot more, but those particular things right there you lose because you decided to accentuate negative.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, so it's kind of hard to tell, given the perspective you put on it. It's kind of hard to tell if even kind of hard to tell what is the actual commentary, given that we don't know how he came to that vision and his ultimate, and where did his ultimate acceptance come from. If it wasn't the year before, which we don't see anything of, if it wasn't the journey itself, where he failed most of the tests.
They're still coming into you're coming into this with the uh, we are coming to this with the outcome that Gawain does make the right decision in the end, if I'm getting you correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I don't envy you if that's where you're if that's where you are, because that's hard. That's going to be exceptionally hard to justify and to argue, because they did such a good job of making him an unpalatable person all the way through this. Gawain by all stripes in our regular walk of life would be a terrible person.
Yeah. Yeah, he did deny that the woman he was hooking up with was that he loved her. Or maybe he did love her. Given that he lets the lady snatch the little bell that she gave him. And that he also seems to have had no plans to make her a lady, or his lady.
Why should he? He's getting the milk for free.
Wow. What if he's lactose intolerant?
Obviously, he's not.
Yeah, yeah. Well, put it like this.
No problem. But if you get it for free,
Yeah, you're gonna have to speak up. You're trailing off a little bit.
oh, sorry. No, I
Yeah.
said, look, people, you can definitely look at it the modern way, but bottom line is, if you're getting the milk for free, why would you pay for it?
Yeah, yeah. I enjoyed the film, at least visually. It was very capturing. He just kind of like he did for some reason bring this level of reality to it that I didn't think he needed to, because he kind of gave himself an out in terms of the scene with the giants. He kind of wrote in like a little out because he had Gawain eat those berries and then throw them up, kind of implying that they were poisonous and possibly hallucinogenic. Oh, so I was kind of like, okay, and then you see the scene with the dog talking and singing to the giants, and you know, making it seem as if like he's just on a trip from that point on, so to speak, a different type of trip.
There's nothing wrong with those berries. There's nothing wrong with the berries, but it's good because he played. Those aren't counts. Those are things for you, the viewer. Oh, well, maybe this. No, maybe. He's an effed up character.
Yeah.
There's no maybe. It's like he was eating all the berries in the world. It wouldn't change the fact that if he was hallucinating, he's still hallucinating that he's a bastard.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. I wasn't saying that as a like writing himself out of being a bastard. He's just writing himself out of the more fanciful aspects of the magic that was happening.
Well,
knowing that we're about to get introduced to giants.
Nah, you can't, because you can't do that, and then you have to go back and say, okay, well, fine. Is he eat these berries when he sees this green giant?
Exactly, who can take his head off? And yes, I don't really even know why he did that. Was there a scene in the poem in which he ate berries or something?
There's no scenes in the poem we ate berries, and if he did, it wouldn't matter, because Arthur's time period is a time period where magic and faith are in the land. Yeah. Okay, they're not at war with each. They're not at war with each other either. Gawain can accept a magical item without it being against his faith, because it's not an evil magical item. You know, if it's something that would actually help him and to preserve his life, there's no problem with any of that. So the idea of these guys, oh, we can't do the magical aspects because, you know, we don't want to get too hokey, you know, magic and so on and so forth. Even though this is a totally fictional film that is by any stretch of the imagination real, but let's not go too far with it. Let's try to keep it grounded in reality as much as we can in this work that is totally fiction.
Yeah. See, I have no idea why he did that, because it was so obvious that he was setting it up that it was like an hallucinogen that I don't know.
Because he can't tell a story.
Damn. Okay. Well, on a scale of 1 to 5 stars, what would it be fair to say that you rate this movie?
0.
All right. So there's no redeeming qualities, and if you had it to do over again, you would not watch this film.
If I had to do it over again, would I not watch this film?
Yeah.
I'm going to watch the film because I usually consume a whole bunch of stuff that is related to Arthurian literature, legend, and lore. So the only way I'm going to know if it's good or not, I have to watch it. I have to read it, so on and so forth. I just listened to a lecture that was horrible about Yvain, the Knight of the Lion, and I'm like, my God, I can't believe I put myself through an hour of listening to this. But I do, because if there's some information that I didn't know, or if there's some analysis that improves my understanding of it, I really want to know that. So I'm going to watch this whatsoever. However, I'm not going to be a soft touch by any stretch of the imagination about this particular thing, since I'm pretty well versed in. I mean, I'm not a college professor who has done doctoral work on this stuff, but I'm positive that I have better than an average understanding of it. And I'm going to look at this and say, no, this is I mean, good grief. I mean, it's literally like taking like a really well-made dinner and then just coming over and taking monkey scat and throwing it on it. I'm like, what for? Delicious. If you wanted to do that, just do that you can do that on your own. But the whole idea isn't to come over, hey, watch this, watch me, you know, it's like bringing people in. Let's watch, you know, Chef Boubele make this great meal, and then he's going to throw scat on it. And then you come there just for the shock value or the sight value of it, but not for the actual meal that was being prepared. Here, you had a great thing that was already there. There's a bunch of stuff you might have been able to do with it, with the technology that you have, if not so much the story. And here, they're just telling me you don't know how to, you're not a good storyteller. You may do good visuals. You may be able to, you know, do some moments here and there that people are like, oh, you know, you can do some jaw drop, slack jaw moments or something of that nature, but you're not a good storyteller.
Yeah. All right. Cool. I guess we summed that up. Is there anything that you can point toward viewers who are kind of like watching this and be like, okay, well, if Calvin didn't really like this, where would you point people who are really thirsting for those heavy themes and some good and a better quality Arthurian tale?
Well, I'll tell you what, if you're actually thirsting for Arthurian legend and lore, I don't really happen around that many people. But if you are, feel free to, put some stuff in the comments after you like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we can definitely have some more discussion about it there. I can definitely put some links in for you if you're interested in it. Besides that, we can continue the discussion there rather than me just put it in the tail ending of the show.
Cool. Sounds good.
Professor CA, thank you for making the journey all the way from the West Coast, battling the fires, battling the bad air, and being able to do the show. It's appreciated every time that you can be guest star. I appreciate it. I didn't want to do the whole thing on my own and just come across, oh God, this was so terrible. Even though it's pretty much, oh God, this is so terrible. At least hopefully having Professor CA gave us some more balance than it would have been on my own. Any last words to the people?
Well, thank you for appreciating me taking the time to fly out. I mean, it was a long flight, and boy, are my arms tired. But boom. Yeah, but no, it's always a pleasure to come hang out with you guys, and you especially, Calvin, and kind of like break this kind of stuff down. And if anything, it makes me more inspired to kind of reread or read deeper into the poem itself, so I can really kind of come across and get to that level that you're on with it right now.
On that note, we'll see everybody next time. Interact out.
Interact out.